Welcome to Area 2071, a research-driven Metaverse podcast.
Hey everyone, it's George from Area 2071. Area 2071 is a project of Blockchain DXB. In this podcast series of Area 2071, we focus on Metaverse, everything related to Metaverse and NFT. This podcast primarily focuses on education, information, research and news about Metaverse across the globe. We will discuss some latest news, technological innovation and adoption of Metaverse. We will also discuss how cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology merges with Metaverse. Finally, we also focus on Dubai, UAE and Middle East in the world of Metaverse. So, let's kick this thing off. Hello fellow citizens of Metaverse, it's George from Blockchain DXB and today is the 9th of September and the crypto market is looking relatively better since the last 24 hours. It is on the verge of crossing the $1 trillion mark and that just might happen in the next couple of hours or so, or it could go down below the $1 trillion mark once again. If you look at the price of cryptocurrencies and blockchain protocols that are linked to Metaverse, since the last 24 hours, they're definitely looking green, but the numbers are really deceiving. If you were to compare that to last week, it is pretty much the same. So the market cap is pretty much the same since the last week. Now in today's episode, we are very briefly going to be looking at the price of the top 5 platforms that are linked to Metaverse. And in today's episode, we will also be discussing the future of Metaverse and its economy. And I'll be discussing my thoughts on the importance of semiconductor and nanochips and how can a country or an industry have competitive advantage or a competitive edge in the Metaverse. And I'll also be discussing few ways how you as listeners and average people can identify scams and illegitimate Metaverse projects. Again, these are just my opinions and I'm pretty much sure there are quite a lot of more information on this. And I'll also be discussing Meta, which is having a campaign in Europe, and the whole idea is they want to discuss the social and economic impact of Metaverse and they're making some move in Europe. And in today's episode, I'm also going to be sharing my macro level factors in Metaverse. So if you're a business entity who is building things on Metaverse, there are 3 things I think you need to focus on. That is onboarding users, getting it right the first time, and interoperability. And I'll be exploring that in detail. And we'll also be looking at top 5 Metaverse news from around the world and top 5 Metaverse news from Dubai and UAE. Now we're going to kickstart the episode by looking at the price of cryptocurrencies that are linked to the Metaverse. So let's kickstart today's episode. So welcome everyone, it's Atim, you're in Dubai and you're listening to Metaverse Everything, where we focus solely on Metaverse. We cover top 5 Metaverse news from around the world and top 5 Metaverse news from Dubai and UAE. Now Metaverse Everything podcast is a research-driven podcast focusing on educational and informational content about Metaverse and its impact. And also guys, remember, Monday to Thursdays, we have Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover job news and information pertaining to the price of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi and Metaverse. And how the series of episodes on the Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is, we usually cover some top news and information pertaining to the price of cryptocurrencies, some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well. News that has an impact in the cryptocurrency world. The other 2 news and information is related to Dubai, UAE and Middle East from the cryptocurrency world. And Monday to Thursdays, we also have an Ask Me Anything series where you listeners can ask any questions from the cryptocurrency world. And in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts of having an Ask Me Anything series regarding Metaverse. So stay tuned for this particular episode. If you look at the top 5 cryptocurrency platforms that are linked to Metaverse, the price is pretty much the same. ApeCoin is currently at $4.48 and since the last 24 hours, it is marginally up by 0.91%, but since the last 7 days, it is down by 5.76%. Decentraland or Mana is below the $1 mark and it is down to 77 cents. It is up by 0.97% since the last 24 hours and down by 0.59% since the last 7 days. Sandbox or Sand is down to 91 cents. Since the last 24 hours, it is up by 1.01%. And since the last 7 days, it is down by 2.62%. Axie Infinity or AXS is currently at $13.82. And since the last 24 hours, it is up by 1.76%. And since the last 7 days, it is down by 1.04%. Theta Network, or Theta, is currently at $1.12. And not much going on since the last 24 hours, but it is marginally up by 0.84%. But since the last 7 days, it is down by 3.25%. Now, if you look at the market cap, it is pretty much the same since the last 7 days. Now, what I do is I have these details every Fridays. Now, last week, the market cap was somewhere around the $11 billion mark, and today it is $11.56 billion. And the 24-hour trading volume, though, has gone up, and it is currently at $1.45 billion. Now, since the last 24 hours, the trading volume has gone up by 21.98%. So the overall crypto market is relatively doing better, and it could be possible that it might just cross the $1 trillion mark. Now, guys, in today's episode, let's kickstart today's episode where I share my thoughts on the future of Metaverse and economy. Now, the future of Metaverse and economy does rely heavily on semiconductors, nanochips, and microchips. And earlier this year, President Biden did have a business lunch with the top firms in the world at the White House, and he did emphasize the importance of nanochips and semiconductor. Now, mind you, he also mentioned that we are heading to a new world order. And my question is, could Metaverse in the next decade be the deciding factor in the new world? Now, when you talk about Metaverse, there is semiconductors, nanochips, and microchips as well. So the big question is, are the silicon chips the new oil? What I personally think is that the nation's ability to constantly update and change with new technologies could lead them to have a competitive advantage in the Metaverse. Now, let me briefly give you very basic information of what is a semiconductor. A semiconductor is a substance that has specific electrical properties that enable it to serve as a foundation for computers and other electronic devices, and semiconductors are going to play a significant role in the impact of Metaverse. So far as the hardware is concerned, let's say the augmented reality, the virtual reality, it's going to play a huge factor. And a nanochip is an entire computer chip. Now, the difference between a microchip and a nanochip is the size of the individual components. So the nanochip is much smaller than a microchip. So the graphic quality, that of images and videos that we see on VR or AR, will be heavily impacted because of the nanochip. And I do feel that it's going to have a very strong impact in the Metaverse. Now look, guys, because of COVID-19, the supply chain management has had a massive impact all over the world. Now this would severely impact the supply chain management so far as the semiconductor is concerned, so far as nanochip is concerned. And that's precisely one of the reasons when President Biden did have the business lunch at White House, he emphasized that American companies need to invest heavily on nanochips, needs to invest heavily on semiconductors, and I'll be discussing which companies in US are heavily investing. And in fact, in the meeting, he actually mentioned that Intel is investing $20 million to $1 billion in semiconductor, and they have a campus in Ohio. And General Motors is investing around $7 billion in its new plants, and a lot of the funds will be going into semiconductor and nanochips. So I do think that semiconductor and nanochips will give countries a huge competitive advantage in the field of Metaverse. Now, if you look at the comparison as to which countries are leading in semiconductor, it is United States, it is Taiwan who is number 2, South Korea, Japan, Netherlands, followed by China. And if you're looking at the top semiconductor companies, it is Nvidia. So these companies will definitely play a significant role in the new world order. Now, so far as Metaverse is concerned, Meta or Facebook could be said to splash the cash on buying some really expensive data centers. Now, according to JP Morgan analyst, Meta or Facebook is planning on using custom chips developed by Broadcom to power its Metaverse domains. Now, this is a brilliant area of opportunity. If you do have a lot of funds, maybe set up a plant where you're investing heavily. And what happened last month is President Biden did sign an order of $52 billion called as the CHIPS Law Implementation, and the bill is to provide $52.7 billion, in fact, in subsidies to US semiconductor production and research to boost efforts to make the United States more competitive with China's science and technology. So if you do want to read the official link on my LinkedIn profile, I provided the official link. Now listen guys, semiconductors are going to be the backbone of the modern economy and the cornerstone of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicle, quantum computing, and definitely Metaverse. And there is also news about Meta that they are anticipating to spend more than $3 billion in the next 10 years on virtual reality headsets, as it intends to work extensively to enhance the virtual reality ecosystem. And Meta has a partnership with a company called Qualcomm, and the ticker symbol for Qualcomm is QCOM. So Meta is expanding its Metaverse chip partnership with Qualcomm, and the chips will be equipped with advanced capabilities to augmented VR experiences. So definitely important. Now in the new world order, I do think that Metaverse will play a significant role. Now what I also like to share is how can a country have competitive edge in the Metaverse? So you need to be an early adopter, you need to have mass production and distribution, and you need to tackle the whole supply chain issue. The economies of scale needs to be right, and you need to have adaptability. Now let me break down these points. Now so far as the early adopter is concerned, a country needs to access clients and better understand the industry's Metaverse use case since its genesis. Now being an early adopter does not necessarily mean or give a recipe for success. On the contrary, early adopters often have resistance to change, and the initial investments could be cumbersome. So if you are an early adopter, you need to have that willingness to change. Now when you talk about mass production and distribution, one thing which I mentioned about Larry Fink, who's the CEO of BlackRock, it is a giant company and they are focusing towards deglobalization. Now how will that impact supply chain management? The whole narrative of think globally, act locally is going to change to think locally and act locally. So mass production can actually assist during supply chain crisis, but it could also create a problem if the world is leading towards deglobalization. The next point that I'd like to share is economies of scale. Now look guys, if there are giant companies who are investing heavily, making economies of scale much more easier, they can offer products at a much cheaper price, and they can also invest in research and development. But the biggest problem with heavily investing in nanochips and semiconductors and having easy economies of scale is that you're unable to switch to newer and updated versions in time. The classic example I can think of is Bitcoin mining's equipment. Now in case of Bitcoin mining's equipment, the new mining equipment is released pretty much every second week. So by the time your new machine is ready, by the time you deliver it to the end consumer, a new version is already out. So it does create a lot of problem as well. And I'm not sure if the semiconductor plant and the economies of scale does actually have any ESG concern. And does it leave any carbon footprint? I really am not sure. Now the final point that I want to make about is the adaptability. So a country or an industry needs to be able to adapt to the challenging market conditions, the customer requirements, and to be honest, even the woke culture. Adaptability is a brilliant feature for a country and an industry, but early adoption could also lead to failures. The classic example I can think of is Samsung Gear's foldable phone. The very first phone that they released it out and it did have a problem and they recalled a lot of the phones. So countries and industries need to be very cautious when they're dealing with semiconductors, nanochips, and microchips. Now in the new world order and deglobalization as the agenda by the elites, will there be a new world economic leader? I definitely do think that Metaverse will play a massive role. Now let me talk about one company that I think would be a world leader, and that is Meta. Now Meta is launching a new campaign in Europe to showcase the potential of social and economic impact of the Metaverse. So they have a campaign called as The Impact Will Be Real, and the slogan is, the Metaverse may be virtual, but the impact will be real. So definitely a brilliant and beautiful slogan. And what they want to do is, they want to run in multiple European countries. As a matter of fact, they have started doing that a few days ago from the 5th of September. So what they want to do is they want to give the end users a glimpse of the benefits of Metaverse. So the ability to learn in 3D. So you will be able to study architecture in 3-dimensional world. You'll be understanding history in a 3-dimensional world. And what I liked in the article is that they mentioned about how geometry can be brought to real life instead of whiteboards or in a classroom. And in the article, they are also focusing on practicing surgery in virtual environments to training first responders without putting them in dangerous situation. So what happens is the first responders are actually putting a virtual reality headset with haptic devices. You're getting a more accurate feel as well. And Meta has also been given a white paper by a company called Analysis Group. Now, if you read through the white paper, which is well over 40 pages long, it estimates that if the adoption of Metaverse in Europe were to grow similarly to mobile technology, it could be associated with a $440 billion contribution to the regional GDP after a decade. So Metaverse and Meta is definitely going to be massive, and it's no surprise why Meta is investing absolutely heavily in Metaverse. Now guys, what I'd like to share is some points on how to identify scams and illegitimate products. Now I'm looking at this, keeping in mind the cryptocurrency scams that I see often. Now the first thing I'd like to mention is make sure you do your own research. Try to research the team. Now having the right team does not necessarily mean that the project is going to be a success. What I strongly recommend is when you're researching for a project, if you see a name of a team member, drop them a message on LinkedIn. And guys, you'd be surprised that once you drop them an email, they wouldn't even be aware that they're part of the team. So you need to make sure that you do your own research. Try to research about the company via social media. Check their interactions if the interactions are genuine or fake. Identify the bots versus real users. Now this part of time, I'm pretty much sure you can identify who are the bots versus real users. The second thing I would recommend is try to understand the technology. Guys, with reference to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, what I always say is once you truly understand what Bitcoin is, you would understand what it is not. And the same thing is applicable for NFTs in particular. Try to understand what it is and Metaverse as well. And does the particular project or protocol fit in the Metaverse? Do we actually require the service, product or protocol? Keep asking these questions. Now, if the explanation is technical, I'm pretty much sure you can always ask a specialist. But the most important thing, what I would recommend you to do is talk to the team, and that is the third part. Drop them an email. And based on my experience, the legitimate products, they always would reply immediately. And they are more than happy to explain what the protocol is all about. If you do have any questions, which I think you should, ask them for absolutely any concerns. You can also post queries regarding them via your social media. And finally, guys, the fourth point, what I'd like to say is question every aspect. Just because it is in the news does not make it genuine. And lately in my Crypto and Coffee Date podcast, I have identified so many fake news, and I did ask for further information. Some of them I got it. Some of them they did actually acknowledge that what they mentioned via the LinkedIn post was absolutely incorrect. But there are so many different ways to identify scams and illegitimate products. If you are stuck, if you do need any information, drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com. And guys, on my website, blockchaindxb.com, I do have a guideline on how to identify illegitimate scams or projects so far as cryptocurrencies, blockchain protocols are concerned. But if you do need any clarification, more than happy to help. Just drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com. Now guys, I'll also like to recommend 4 points, and these are very generic points at a macro level. And what is it that businesses need to look at in order for Metaverse to be successful? The first one is onboarding users. Now look guys, getting users to use your product is the most important thing and the biggest challenge for absolutely any business. Meta or Facebook has 3.5 billion active users. You also need to remember that you're competing with, if not, one of the biggest giants in Metaverse. And you need to decide if your growth will be organic or do you require marketing. The biggest beauty of Bitcoin is the growth of Bitcoin was absolutely organic. But if you're competing with Meta or Facebook, they are an absolutely giant. The second, and this is a very basic for any business, getting it right the first time. Now the user experience that you provide needs to wow the customers. It just can't be ordinary. One thing what I always tell my clients is, whatever user experience that you have, make sure it is an extremely easy user interface, something which a 5-year-old is able to utilize and an 80-year-old is also able to utilize. So a 5-year-old and an 80-year-old should be able to access your products. The third one, and this is where the whole notion of Web3 kicks in, that is interoperability. Now, basic expectation in the metaverse is that your particular product is available across multiple platforms. So digital assets should be utilized across various platforms. So let's say if you have one particular product in Decentraland, you should be able to use it in another protocol as well. One of the areas which I think interoperability does make a massive impact is payments or medium of exchange and NFTs. So if you're building anything, make sure that they are interoperable. And finally, the fourth one is user-owned content. The whole hype about Web3 is that users should be able to own 100% of the content. Now, what Meta is planning to do is they are planning to have a hybrid platform. So part of the protocol will be centralized, whereas the other will be distributed. This goes back to the whole deglobalization aspect. Think local, act local. But the biggest question is, what happens in case of sanctions? And what happens if there are illicit activities? And the reason I'm saying that is, in the recent past, we have seen what happened to Tornado Cash. But this is something that you need to check as well. You need to make sure that you follow local rules and regulations. Now guys, let's talk about the top 5 metaverse news from around the world. The first one is right from Africa. So Metaverse Magna, they have raised $3.2 million at the $30 million valuation to build Africa's largest gaming DAO, or decentralized autonomous organizations. So definitely brilliant news. And one thing which I was talking to my relatives is how Africa is making a play not just in metaverse but in cryptocurrency as well. And Dubai UAE is a focal point in having your business set up so that you can also have your products and services in Africa as well. So definitely brilliant news. The second news is about a cricketing legend and one of my favorite cricketers called Kumar Sangakkara. Now he was a wicketkeeper and a left-handed batsman, and if not one of the best strikers in Sri Lankan cricket team. So the former Sri Lankan cricketer Kumar Sangakkara is set to form a new esports company called Behavial, and it has also been reported that the well-known investors are pouring seed money into an ambitious plan to create a sporting metaverse, and it does have crickets and other game as well, so it's definitely going to be really interesting. The third news is from China. Now this is something really unique, and what they want to do is, and what they have done is, they have an artificially intelligence powered chief executive officer. So an AI powered humanoid robot is the new CEO of a Chinese metaverse company, and Miss Tang Yu is a virtual humanoid robot powered by artificial intelligence, and she has been appointed as the rotating CEO of Fujian Net Dragon. So go to the website, it's really interesting, and it is a bit creepy as well. And a Metafluence in Dubai, which is focusing on influencers in metaverse. If you go to the LinkedIn profile, they also have an artificial intelligence based influencer. So the influencer will be promoting your products, but it is enabled by artificial intelligence. So it looks like artificial intelligence is combining with metaverse. Now it is really interesting and a bit creepy as well at the same time. The fourth news is about a car manufacturer called Hongkong from China. Now what they want to do is they want to have electronic concept cars in the metaverse. Now Hongkong is a Chinese luxury car marque owned by automaker Fav Car Company, and Hongkong was launched in 1959, making it the oldest Chinese passenger car marque. Now what they have done is they have launched 3 bold electrical concepts in its metaverse. All 3 of these concepts are based around the automaker's super electric intelligent vehicle platform architecture. So they have 3 models. The concept takes the form of Hongkong Sedan electric vehicle, Hongkong SUV electric vehicle, and Hongkong ELS. So definitely brilliant news. It'll be really interesting once you have the haptic devices to use that in a virtual reality or augmented reality. Now guys, the 5th news from around the world is about Meta once again. And Meta, or Facebook, is helping 10 universities to come together and create virtual campuses in Metaverse. So universities will be actively involved in Metaverse. Now as part of this, they are investing $150 million in an immersive learning project, and Meta has collaborated with Victor XR, which is an Iowa-based company that is designing virtual companies. So Metaverse in the education industry is definitely a game changer. And guys, I often have interviews with CEO and startups in Dubai, and I do ask them this question of all the industries, which industry do you think will be most impacted by Metaverse? And surprisingly, a lot of them did actually say education industry. So definitely brilliant news. Now guys, let's look at the top 5 Metaverse news from Dubai and UAE. The first one, which is a big one, is the Metaverse Assembly. Now the Museum of Future, they have an event on the 28th and the 29th of September, and this event is organized by the Dubai Futures Foundation, or called as DFF, and the event will host the World Economic Forum, Meta or Facebook, Mastercard, Emirates Airlines, Accenture, among other global organizations. So Dubai Metaverse Strategy did actually mention about Dubai Metaverse Assembly, and they're going to be having a massive event on the 28th and 29th of September. Now guys, listen, if you do want to find out anything about Dubai Metaverse, I have a podcast which is focusing only on Dubai Metaverse Strategy. I believe it is well over 40 minutes long. I talk everything about the whole idea generation of Dubai Metaverse Strategy, what did Sheikh Hamdan tweet about it, the Dubai Task Force, the Dubai Metaverse Assembly, and a lot more information about the event on the 28th and 29th of September. Now, the Museum of the Future is also working on an NFT with Binance, and I'm not sure if on the 28th or 29th of September is when they're going to be releasing the NFT. So definitely brilliant news. The second news is about blockchain DXB, and something which I mentioned at the start of the podcast as well. Now guys, what I want to do is, I want to have an Ask Me Anything series where I take a list of 10 to 20 questions, I answer them and release it as a podcast episode. So what I plan to do is, I plan to have an Ask Me Anything series where you listeners can ask any questions about Metaverse. Now I'll be doing that via my social media channel as well. So I might be getting comments from people via, let's say, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I'll be answering those questions. So one particular episode, just having an Ask Me Anything questions about Metaverse. And in the meantime, if you do have any questions, drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com. Now guys, the next news is about the Beirut blast that happened a few years ago. And after the Beirut blast, there was a lot of chaos in Lebanon. And one of the companies in Dubai, they have done a documentary. So the Beirut After the Blast documentary did actually premiere with special Metaverse screening that took place in Dubai at the Waldorf Astoria, which is in Dubai International Finance Center. And this took place on the 1st of December. And it was directed by activist and witness of the blast, Fahad Abu Salah. This entire project was done by a company called M Content, and Umar Masoom, who is the founder and CEO of M Content, did actually mention that via his LinkedIn profile. And the aftermath of the impact of the blast, which I'm pretty much sure that you've seen it via Twitter and YouTube, did actually rip through Lebanon's capital on the 4th of August 2020. So it also asked the question on what happened in the blast, and the documentary is 50 minutes long. Now I haven't watched it. It'll be really interesting to see with Metaverse how it actually works out. Now, you might be getting a very realistic experience, so it's going to be really interesting. The fourth news, guys, is about estate. So Versi Estate are planning to get into the Metaverse as well. Now, interestingly, this particular news was mentioned in Cointelegraph and not yet published by mainstream media yet in Dubai and in UAE. And Versi Estate wants to play a key role in contributing to Dubai Metaverse strategy. So what they're doing is they're organizing an invitation-only event on the 24th of October at its newly opened high-tech showroom in Aliskrill Avenue in Dubai. Definitely a brilliant location. So what they want to do is they want to bring together the UAE government officials, institutions and partners where the Good Morning Web3 podcast, which is held by the thought leader John Kraske. And what he wants to do is he wants to have a panel of experts in the field and insightful discussion, allowing guests to better understand how Web3 will transform the future of internet and how businesses can evolve to ride this wave of transformation. So they just might be a competitor to me, but I'll be more than happy to work alongside with them. So Versi Estate, what they want to do is they want to have a hyper-realistic Metaverse headquarters, and they are fully licensed in Dubai, and they are introducing a hyper-realism to provide a more enriching virtual environment, allowing people and businesses to transition seamlessly to the virtual business. So brilliant use case. And finally, guys, the fifth one, and this is a big one. GITEX is, if not one of the biggest events so far as technology is concerned, it just might be the biggest event in the world. Now, they have an event on the 10th of October till the 14th of October. And what they want to do is they want to bring Metaverse into GITEX. And they want to have Metaverse like you have never seen before. And they have something called as Xverse. And the creation of Xverse is another experiential highlight of GITEX Global. And they're doing that in partnership with multiple tech elites. And they want to draw audiences into the foray of much hype Web 3.0 and Metaverse economy. Now listen guys, if you don't want to find out more information about it, go to the GITEX Instagram account, and this is where I got the news from. They have put up a video, and in that video you can actually see a guy going through the virtual environment in the Metaverse and in the GITEX arena. So definitely brilliant news. So looks like Metaverse is definitely having an impact in GITEX, and GITEX will definitely be showcasing the best use case of Metaverse. GITEX, guys, I do think is one of the key proponents of making Dubai a world leader in the Web3 and the top 10 city in the world so far as Metaverse is concerned. So that's all for today, guys, on Metaverse Everything podcast on Blockchain DXB. In case if you guys have any feedback or suggestions, please drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com or at info@area2071.com, and check out my website area2071.com that talks everything about Metaverse. You can also check out my other website blockchaindxb.com that covers everything about Metaverse. And guys, if you like listening to this podcast, please click on the follow button, give it a 5-star rating, and share the word across. And remember guys, Monday to Thursdays we have Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover top news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And how the series of episodes on the Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is, we usually cover some top news and information pertaining to the price of cryptocurrencies, some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well, news that has an impact in the cryptocurrency world. The other two news and information is related to Dubai, UAE, and Middle East in the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And remember guys, Monday to Thursdays we also have an Ask Me Anything series where you listeners can ask any questions from the cryptocurrency world. And what you're listening to right now is the Metaverse Everything podcast, and I'm pretty much sure I'm going to be having an Ask Me Anything series pretty soon. So if you do have any questions regarding Metaverse, drop them in the comments below. Thanks so much for listening guys, and have a brilliant weekend ahead. Bye bye.